T-minus 3, 2, 1, 0.
Hello, folks. Welcome back to the Launch Sequence Podcast. I am your host, Space Tomato, and we've got a little bit of a new background here. Some of you have seen it during the stream. Welcome. It's backwards still. That's so I can face him, who is our lovely guest today, coming to talk with us about Star Citizen's industrial gameplay, mining, NICs, how it's going to change, what we hope changes, and what it's doing right now. Thank you for joining me, Red Monster. How you doing?
Yeah, well, I'm doing good. Honestly, you open up calling me a lovely guest, and I'm flattered. So, no, it's great to be back on the show and talk about things I'm passionate about in Star Citizen. So,
you've been on the show multiple times before, and I think we've had a lovely experience every time. But the audience could check me. You know, I might be wrong. There might be a time when you had stormed off the show and we were screaming at each other. I can't say I remember any episodes ending like that, but it's possible.
I'm pretty sure hats were involved.
Oh, yeesh, that's dangerous. Somebody tell TV Liquid.
I know, right?
We've got a big update coming. 4.4 is a big update. I say we can start talking about that a little bit because that news just came out. And it's the first time going to a new star system. Can we even say that it's the first time? It is kind of the first time going to a new star system. But that is seeming like it's going to lead to a lot more changes in mining and industrial gameplay overall. So I thought, you being like the most profound miner that I know, that's such a weird sentence. You being your org, you guys do all the rock scraping stuff, and I wanted to see how it affected the people who were so deeply entrenched in that gameplay, and kind of what you were feeling. Before we get into 4.4, let me just start by asking you, how did CitizenCon go for you? How do you feel about it?
I actually hosted the Salt Lake City watch party with a couple of other organizers, but I got to play MC and kind of chief cat herder throughout the day. So my actual experience watching CitizenCon happened like the Monday after watching the replay. I got to see bits and pieces, but was bouncing around. But I will say I thought they had a good balance of content that they knew they could deliver on, they talked about the new system. They talked about the planetary tech, and more in depth than what they had shown in last year's CitizenCon. But there was a lot of stuff that was left unsaid, and I think those are just they're in flux. They're being worked on. They just weren't at a point that they were ready to show and commit to. And while it seemed short, what they did provide had a good amount of content to it. So
definitely heavy on content. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel like we have not heard much over the course of this last year in like inside Star Citizen and stuff, kind of like a drought because they're holding back for CitizenCon, some would believe. Did it feel like that to you?
It felt like the content drought, to acknowledge the content drought, yes, absolutely. I feel like they've been diverting a lot of focus to other things, and that's really primarily, I believe, Squadron 42. With as much of a drought as we saw in the content leading up to CitizenCon, that's one of the big disappointing factors, is that it was only a 2-hour-long presentation. We had 4 or 5 panels that were kind of mixed in between.
Yeah.
Really, with as much as we've kind of just let it cook, we're still going to have to let it cook. We didn't get the meal yet. And that's where, once they get Squadron settled and we can start seeing those resources kind of come across, that's what's going to be important for us. I think one of the big examples, base building, right? We were supposed to start base building work and getting into players' hands at the beginning of this year, but they kind of pivoted and shifted into the year of playability. And so I think we're getting our first crafting items, like the actual crafting module, soon. They had committed, at least from that. We saw a working tech version in the engine, just for simple things. But I think that's going to be really important, is as we start delivering on those, the smaller pieces, rather than showing us the multi-story hydroponics towers and stuff like that for a base building system that was still in concept. So
Yeah.
yeah.
That's kind of the fun of the whole process, is like looking back on a video like that.
hmm Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's the goal, right? But there's a lot of cooking left to do before that happens. So
Yeah. And it's just it's interesting to think about how things could have been different. Not necessarily like they different in a major way, other than just that, like, what if that first video they showed us about base building was much smaller in scale and scope, and then they had slowly
Mhm.
built it out? What if we didn't know they had those plans at this point? Would that be
Yeah,
better because like expectations would be lower, or would it be worse because people thought Star Citizen was aiming smaller?
I think we need to have an idea of what the target is, right, off in the distance, and understand, like, hey, we understand you're using the pea shooter at 10 meters, right?
Hmm.
But really, we've got it's a distant goal, right? But what you're seeing out there is like player crafted space station, really. Like that was all kind of culminating up to that point, saying, you're going to be able to build bases, you're going to be able to craft components, talking through all that. And like the natural culmination is like you can create your own space station, right, as an org or anything like that. But that's understanding that's the goal and how we get from here to there. I think people, if all we saw was like crafting armor and weapons, they probably would be happy with it. But then they'd say, well, what's the next step? Like,
Yeah.
and kind of giving a mouse a cookie, right? They're going to take that, one bite at a time and up the ladder of complexity. But understanding what the final goal is, I think both um, creates some FOMO. Like, I want that version of the game, and I have to settle for this, fishbowl of isolation, really.
Yeah.
So,
That's why it's really hard to sell an idea on a finished concept, or like a concept of what it would look like finished, because you never know if you're really going to reach it, how long it would take, all that kind of stuff. It's
yeah.
complicated. Do you think that they've gotten past the point where they needed to do that?
Um, Maybe. I mean, there's a lot of big picture target ideas that they've floated out there and put, very publicly in a player's minds. That's what we're all kind of mentally preparing for, and there's something they have to deliver on there, obviously. But I think, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. There haven't been any other real major content revelations, right? It's just executing to the roadmap they've already defined for us, right?
Yeah, I think
I'm,
obviously
I'm
like the space stations you mentioned were a big one.
yeah, like I'm trying to wrap my head around, like racking my brain to see if there's any other like new game loops that have been concepted that we in like the last year that we have gotten word of, and I'm not drawing anything immediately. Obviously somebody in comments or chat is gonna call
I
that out,
think
but
you maybe could argue like full on Monster Hunter might be that.
mhm,
There is definitely the idea that you would be, you know, finding fauna and maybe
yeah,
taking resources from them in the past, but the whole idea that you would be going and like stalking a monster and then taking it
mhm.
out like they want, like they presented with the sandworm, maybe it was a bit of a new concept. But in general, I'm
I
just more wondering if you think that, well, yeah, do they need to go to a CitizenCon and talk about these kinds of far off things anymore?
No, I think it's more about delivering, right? And we're all kind of here patiently waiting for the ideas to cook, right? And that's um, where we have the ideas that we want, and we just want them to execute to that. As long as they can show us the progress, like having the crafting module, like that crafting a bench, basically, like get that to me. I'd love that, right? I'd start playing around with that and figuring out how to tweak it, but understanding the balance between the economics, like how much things are going to cost, both in resources and how to balance that out, how much you should be able to sell that for if you're going to be able to make a profit. Those are the types of things I'm more interested in rather than the big picture ideas that they've sold us over the past few years. They've stopped doing that and really delivered on what the fine details are to get those ideas going.
Yeah, I'm going to
I don't
be
think they
interested
needed
in. Go ahead.
I don't think they need to give us new concepts for gameplay loops. I think what they're giving us is, the execution to what concepts they've kind of floated. So,
Yeah, I think most people would agree with you there.
mhm.
I'm going to be interested in talking more about that kind of the economy and around commodities and stuff like that later on in this show. For now, let's jump into Alpha 4.4. It was just revealed this last week what it was going to include initially. Everything's tentative, nothing is confirmed yet, but we've got a fairly long list, I would say, of different deliveries that kind of encapsulate the last year of what they've been doing. Content, new factions, new rewards, missions, a couple new locations, and a new star system. What do you think of this first look at 4.4? How do you feel about where they're going with Nyx?
Well, I mean, we're getting the next star system. Delamar asteroid, Levski landing zone, the Glacium ring. There's a lot of mining events that are going to be or mining content, right? That's out there. The notably absent are the planets that are going to be kind of relying on that Genesis tech. So it's going to be interesting to see how those get released. When we got Pyro, we got the tech preview was a limited number of planets, like kind of the inner few, and then we got Pyro 5 and beyond as it got into more like kind of the wave 1 or whatever level that was.
Yeah, does that bother you?
Um,
The planets not being in this first one?
I mean, not really, but you think about where I'm coming from. Like, if we have Glacium Ring to go out and mine an asteroid belt, like that'll be some content, right? It'll be a new location. Levski will be kind of I think a bottleneck opportunity there. If people are trying to go to the one refinery station, I think people are gonna, we're gonna see some emergent gameplay from that as players.
Gameplay, he calls it.
Yeah, right. But I think it's going to be an interesting aspect there. Kenny, I'm not sure if they're really considering that it's going to be a logistical bottleneck for the system, and how difficult that's going to make things for player versus player interaction. So I'm not as bothered without having the planets in there. I understand the tech's going to be there, but I am absolutely expecting those planets to get in and be stellar, right? Just they're going to be the new Genesis tech and everything that they should be bringing back or bringing in. I think it's going to bring some opportunities that are going to be unique in Nyx. I just, you hate to have it not in the initial release, but
yeah,
yeah,
especially because it sounds like that the release of the planets is going to have something that changes the way minables work on planets.
yeah. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Just kind of their. I know this was on the topics for the future about the Genesis planet tech and how it's gonna how you're gonna be able to target materials. So maybe we'll hold that for later. Or
all right. Yeah. So the 4.4 delivery of Nyx is going to be missing the planets. I'm mostly in the same boat as you. I'm not too bothered by it, but that also might just be because I'm very used to half deliveries in this game's development.
Yeah.
How long have you been playing again? When did you start?
I started backing in 2015. So in the 10-year club, there was a couple of year break in between there as like my own PC hardware wasn't kind of keeping up, and but been back. That was like 2020 that I got back into things. So
so you got to see Levski before, and B, you got to see Stanton built over time.
Yeah, when I stopped playing initially, so when I started playing, we didn't really have the Stanton like persistent universe, right? We had hanger modules
Right.
and we had the Arena Commander, and then we got like the Area 18 preview, and then
Oh,
that's
you were
when
around for
I
a while, dude. That's before
yeah, so
2015.
yeah, like that 263 release was like when they first got the persistent universe in, and like I was heavily involved, just like watching and kind of playing there. You get in with like 15 players and Portal Lasar, so those are kind of my earlier days in the persistent universe.
Cool.
When we got some of we had 2 or 3 moons around Crusader, and that was whatever my current hardware. I wasn't getting planet surfaces rendering properly, so I'd fly to the planet surface and it would just all go blank, and I'd crash and die, and I wouldn't be able to like get out and land on anything. Yeah. So at that point, I kind of hung it up for a bit and wouldn't play at other games and focused on other aspects. But came back in at like 3.12, I want to say. And that at that point, the entire standard system was already built out.
Okay. Gotcha. So you got an idea of how it was constructed. And I mean, if you
Yeah,
were here for 3.12, that was like the thick of it in the 3.x features and
yeah,
updates. You remember what we were seeing delivered. So compared to 4.4, where we're seeing some new missions, a new sort of sandbox system set up in the asteroid belt, new star system, new armor, new weapons, all this stuff. Does it feel like 4.4 is a bigger update than what you were getting back during 3.12? Does it feel like it's just kind of the stuff is different and not necessarily more? How does it compare?
I mean, it's um, hard to really think through that. I know for like 3.12, we had a bunch of big changes in like 3.14 or 3.15, I think, for mining. That's when it went to a mass density, things like that. We had a lot of other like gameplay changes and server meshing, object persistence. Like you used to have to go rebuy all your components. So
Yeah.
um, the systems and stuff we interact with on a like session by session basis, they're a lot more refined, and we were getting pretty consistent refinements on those systems, like gameplay systems, not like star systems. But yeah, like I think the road to 4.0 was a very, very long road. We had that kind of 3.18 to 3 whatever, and it
The
kind of
2 years
kept
of
dragging out. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So I can appreciate why Jared probably didn't want to shave, like didn't want to say I'm not shaving my beard till 4.0, like that type of thing would be he'd look pretty wizardly. But 4.0 is a big update as far as like bringing in an entire star system, right? And while it had its hiccups, there's not anything really standing out as being like game breaking, like maybe we had in like 3.18 when kind of the object persistence, like long term persistence, really came in.
Yeah.
That had I think everyone who was around for 3.18 agrees it was probably like one of the worst releases from a player playability standpoint.
By far.
We haven't seen anything. Yeah, haven't seen anything like that. They've been a little bit more conservative about what they're committing into. And then yeah, between 4.0 and some of the other stuff that's come, I'm excited about 4.4. I feel like it's maybe not quite as significant as the 4.0 release. We are getting a new star system, but it's not like a full fleshed version. But I'm okay with it being kind of piecemeal as we get those planetary tech kind of settled out. And I expect once we get, there's a critical threshold they've got to get to. Once they hit that, we'll see the rest of the system built out pretty quickly. But
When they announced this, Chris was like really excited, all bright and smiling on camera. He's like,
Mhm,
"We got 2 systems in 1 year." Do
mhm.
they deserve to be able to say that with how they're delivering it in your opinion?
If they ship it, yeah, that's you can kind of cart before the horse. But yeah, as we get 4.4 in, there's plenty of time. 2 systems in 1 year. Yeah, I think they get to say that.
Yeah.
Um, you talk about what actually is around in the next system, and like Delamar was really kind of the I guess the hero asset of the system they needed to make sure was done, and it's there, right? We got to see plenty of detail on it, like from seeing Levski before to seeing what it is now. Like I'm excited to go back in and explore, and that the Glacian Ring. They talk about some of the sandbox type events they're going to be bringing in, and some of the dynamic stuff, and those are all very exciting. They're going to have mission and gameplay stuff for larger groups, and I think enough content that solo players and kind of the pacifists will be happy with it. So
It is, if they were bringing in the planets and not Levski, I would probably say
yeah,
no, it's not the system, but it's really important to have Levski in there. I also think having the interstellar trade missions coming from Levski could be good. But what I'm really hoping is just that like the stuff that people like you are getting out there in Nyx and collecting is actually worth shipping back to Stanton.
yeah, that's and that's a good point for a tangent here on the economics side, because it's got to be worth it, right? And I think a lot of the missions right now, there's just really poor balancing between like mining and salvaging. We've seen prices for those get really nerfed, and it just seems like the economic balancing side of the game isn't matching up with the industrial production and gameplay loops there. So it's a lot of times more profitable just to go out and dogfight, right?
Yeah.
And that's sad, because you talk about mining being a very complex game loop, but at the same time, if you have 20 steps in a process between finding rock to selling refined ore, if every step in that process is a potential pitfall for a server error or some type of gameplay breaking issue, it's really tough to get paid on those. And I think there's you want to be able to make sure people are rewarded, but at the same time balance that versus you know uh, overinflating. So when the gameplay systems are polished, it's not like a massive overpayment, that type of thing.
Well, it's kind of a tough situation because you want to pay people for putting themselves in danger. That makes sense.
Hmm.
But at the same time, they already push combat so much through marketing and visibility and the way that they
Yeah.
format a lot of their events that it doesn't need that help. Instead, you should be giving industry that help and like being and saying, "Hey, we know this isn't as exciting or as obvious to people outside of the game, but if you do industrial, you'll make more money."
Yeah, and if that were true, if you said if you do industrial you can make more money, I think a lot more people would do it, because
Yeah.
it's more complicated. It's a skill set you got to learn, and it absolutely deserves to be rewarded better than what it's at right now. And even so far, like now that we've got with salvage coming in for refining your salvaged materials, right? You've got refinery loss, you've got the transport, the reclaimer that can dock but can't unload or can't be seen by the refinery. Like there's there's a number of things in those gameplay loops, and I think one of the things I criticize the most is like the salvage contracts. If you go out and spend, you're getting charged 10 to 30,000 credits for really basic level ships, and you're not turning a profit on those at all, right? You're losing money to go out and salvage with the way that the economy is currently built. So,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah,
if you
it's
go
not
find your
fun.
own ships, you'll turn a profit. But doing the contracts is
Right.
not doing it today.
Speaking of contracts, one of the new additions in Alpha 4.4 is the first pack of Nyx missions, they say, using existing archetypes with fresh new narrative spins against, it literally says against new enemies. So I was going to ask you if you thought this included bringing in salvage missions and putting them in Nyx with some new complications, but then it's just like in CIG nature. They just got to be like, yeah, but there's enemies there.
Hmm. Yeah, no. Why wouldn't there be enemies there? You're out on the border of Vanduul space, and it's everybody for themselves. So
I mean, there's got to be safe salvage out there.
yeah, yeah.
Like, don't you expect there to be mining missions out in the Glacium Ring where you're not running into folks?
I would expect, yeah, you could be out not running into folks at all, just kind of freelancing on your own. But if they want to give you a little juicy nugget of, hey, like this particular location has a lot of the good stuff, like give us an improved spawn rate in one zone with the added risk that, hey, this, we broadcast this location, it might have gotten intercepted somewhere. Somebody might know and show up to try and take over. So like you've got a limited time to do it before somebody might show up. That's the type of like, risk for a mining operation or a salvage operation that would make sense.
Right.
What was they had a big like kind of a dynamic salvage, like you were cleaning up after a battlefield type thing where there was like some big naval combat engagement. You get out and there was a bunch of like Polaris and other like large scale ships there. Do you
Yeah.
remember what the name of it
Scraps.
was?
Something scraps.
Yeah.
I don't know. Anybody in chat know that one? Pick up the scraps. Is that it? Or is
in the
that
wake
might
of
have been our
disaster.
orange? Wake of disaster. That's
Wake of
it.
disaster.
Yeah.
Yeah. They need to bring missions like that back. Like those were a good balance of risk reward, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So when they say they have these mission packs, it's interesting to hear them say they want existing archetypes because it's like, yeah, okay, what about race missions? Because we had those. We don't have them in the game anymore.
Mhm.
How about mining
Right.
missions? You guys talked about making those, but they're not in Stanton. Are you going to bring them to Nyx where mining's important? Salvage missions? Is that
Yeah.
also true? Investigation, collection, like what do you think? Do you think we're going to be able to go into Nyx and get the same cross section of mission types as we get in Stanton?
I would think probably similar cross section. Like you're gonna have cleaning up after a battle, for salvage. You're gonna have your bounty hunting with the local authority there. Somebody's run afoul of their regulations, and you're also going to potentially have, we've heard of this Vanduul raiding pack out by this mining outpost. Like, go help them out. Like, rescue that. Kind of like with the Second Life resource drive, right? We had multiple ways to get the missions done. You could go escort a cargo hauler, you could go recover something, but you had combat of those missions. You also had just the ability to turn in bulk materials and get a payout reward for those. Like that's the type of thing that I think could persist on its own, like with unique missions for each. And a great way to get like mining missions set up. Just say, hey, like we want to get 200 SCU of agresium, kind of your mid-level materials, and just have it be open-ended like that, saying, hey, we want this much of X material, or we'll pay you a bonus for this material, and have it kind of hit and miss. So
You think they'll have that stuff in 4.4?
I'd be hopeful, but I wouldn't hold my breath for it. It would be a pleasant surprise if they're able to get that done, but I think they'll have more kind of like the Second Life resource drive potential events. So, and I'm not big on lore as far as the system goes. Paul's gonna harass me about that, but I feel like it is gonna be a little bit more frontier-esque, a little bit less settled. So it would make sense to have kind of rescue missions and recovery missions as more the norm, right?
Man, that would be, dude. It would be amazing if 4.4 dropped in and they had the like NPC rescue recovery kind of investigation missions back in there. Dude, it would bring a tear to my eye.
Yeah. So, and like even like ship repair, somebody's got a power plant that's blown up, like, or damaged. You have to go board the ship, repair it, and they pay you, and you can, they'll take off with their ship once you're out, and that type of thing. Or like just go on to recover. Say, hey, like a great example, we had an unfortunate incident in one of my recent streams where the Paladin took some damage. And yeah, our quantum drive was down to 0% health, and we couldn't quantum travel. So we got out. We were trying to repair that with like the tractor beams and stuff, but being able to come in and like recover a ship like that, deliver it back, or if there's an NPC crew that can fly it away, that's the type of thing you think about in the frontier, right? Your space AAA. to get out there and change somebody's flat tire.
Yeah.
So.
I remember when they used to talk about pyro and how they would want refueling to be a big deal because it's so hard to find services and things. And
Yeah, and I think what happened was the folks that were serious about those type of missions, like refueling and even like rescue, like medical rescue, people could set up a beacon, but a lot of times it was just bored players baiting people into combat, right? And if you show up with a Starfarer full of fuel to try and refuel somebody for what, like 5,000, 10,000 credits, but when you show up, there's like three retaliators that all torpedo you right off the bat, like you lose way more than you're gaining. So
yeah, but I think that's kind of a product of like the game not keeping up with its own development. Is now the
yeah,
only way to get refuel. And they suggested this to us. It's not like they have an official means and we're supposed to do something. You know, they were like, yeah, if you want to get refueled in the game, just go ahead and send a message out in global chat for
yeah,
like, guys, do you what? Have you been on the
yeah.
internet?
And I think that ties back into like player reputation as one of the core gameplay systems that's really been underdeveloped, and that I think would go leaps and bounds in a positive direction and influencing those type of the cooperative interactions that they want to develop. And with the current mission chain, the Citizens for Prosperity and Headhunters missions, I've been at several of these locations and had other players that are there around, and you're talking in voice chat, local, and just saying, hey, like, I'm a player here, I'm trying to do my mission, and like I actually had a lot more cooperative events happening there, and with a Second Life resource drive, if somebody had a working freight elevator, you'd be cooperating and helping people unload. Like we had 3 or 4 haulers that were all doing the same type of thing at the same outpost. So
Yeah, I think if there were just a little bit more deterrent and consequence, deterrent from acting like an ass and consequence for the people who do,
yeah,
people would be surprised at how many more folks just kind of want to work together to get to
yeah,
constructive goals.
right. Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna just say the getting that type of a player reputation system and then making that something that's visible is definitely, like, it should be a higher priority.
Yeah.
Hopefully it is behind the scenes that we just haven't seen from them. But
I don't know. I got a lot
yeah,
of bones to pick with reputation. Don't get me started. They are
yeah,
talking about some abandoned space stations in the Nix system. Back in CitizenCon 2022, maybe 3. I don't know, one of those years. It might have been both. They talked about having the pyro space stations be abandoned locations where you could go in and there was possible PvP, PvE, a little exploration, some loot to get, engineering to play with, that kind of stuff. I still think that's kind of the plan, but clearly they weren't in a place to deliver that experience in pyro, and instead they just did contested zones. Do you think that
yeah,
these new QV service stations, which they say are abandoned across Nix, and some are occupied by a new enemy faction? There's going to be several of these stations in Nix and 4.4. Do you think these are going to be like the asteroid bases that we have in Pyro, where there's not really any reason to go there? Do you think these are going to be tied into anything more in depth, or is this a nothing addition?
yeah. My hope is like it would be something a little bit more engaging than just the contested zones, right? Getting in there, fighting some local factions. Maybe there is going to be some exclusive loot. We talk about contested zones having high end components, the Hathor laser platform, those type of things. I'd hope it's a little bit more sandbox than curated mission. You'll have areas where it's pretty highly contested, but at the same time, I can totally appreciate them not putting the developer and artist time into areas that players are going to explore maybe a couple of times. Kind of feeding them through the content they can create right now, because otherwise it's just going to be too much to try and curate. So
I do wonder how many of these kinds of places they're adding in because they know that the asset itself is good, but it's going to take other features in the future to like make them properly nice. Like the distribution centers, you can tell they're not being very utilized right now, but they have a lot of potential for if once they have like the economy going and underground mining and all that kind of stuff happening.
Yeah.
Um, I feel like that's kind of where these space stations are going to be as well, and it sounds like that's where you're leaning.
Yeah, I think it'll be kind of a it'll be more of a curated experience on the space stations, similar to like kind of the ASD facilities, right? That
Okay.
you get in there, it'll have kind of a similar layout and format, but you'll pick a mission at one, and get out there. I one of the things I struggle with is they talked about the rest and relax stations that they're modular, but they all end up looking kind of the same. So
Yep.
it's akin to like showing up to a Walmart in a different town and the layout's slightly different, so you kind of get lost a little bit. But like it's familiar enough that you can get yourself lost there
Yeah.
and unlost pretty easily. But
You're running
I
down a
think,
hallway, suddenly it turns the wrong way.
yeah, right. So I think it'll have aspects that way, and um, kind of a like I said, a more curated experience as you get through with some objectives that are pretty clearly marked, and kind of what they've done with the ASD facilities. So
I just hope they're not as bad as the asteroid facilities in Pyro. Those have
yeah,
there's like no reason to go there. I wish there
yeah,
was because it's
I
ship combat and FPS, but
yeah, and every time I've gone to one of the kind of those asteroid bases out in Pyro, like if I'm out trying to just do mining, like there's always going to be like an NPC that just shows up, and if you're focused on trying to break a rock, they show up right then and start
yeah,
attacking you. So you got to abandon and getting back to the same place. Like you can't mark those locations. It's just
right,
yeah,
right.
it's
You
a
can't
nightmare.
mark it for
So
later. You can't. The minerals don't sell for enough to pay for you to have an escort.
yeah,
It's like they could put valuable loot inside of these asteroid bases. They could put valuable minerals around them, and then they could keep the enemies going on and be like, "This is the place where if you enjoy these game loops and you
hmm
enjoy a risk while doing them." And you want to grow up with escorts and test that kind of stuff out, come out to the asteroid facilities in Pyro, and maybe you'll get something good out
yeah.
of it. I
Well,
just,
and a great way to kind of bring players into those type of events, like Pyro's got two unique materials that are very high value, Styleron and Rixite, and both like they rival or beat Quantanium as far as pricing, and they're stable. So it's not like you have a time limit. But if you had a high concentration of those at that specific asteroid base where you're going to have NPCs fighting, like that would make it absolutely worth it to go out with a security team. And like, yeah, we'd show up in full force to go mine everything we could at one of those,
yeah,
clean house, and come back to the keep just cycling through them one after the other as we get them done. So
dude, people would love that, man. You have to go out there
yeah,
with an Idris and like you're changing out mining pods and sending them off with an armed escort and you have
hmm
to send it through the jump point because it sells for better in Stanton. Like these aren't
yeah.
even these aren't even new features. This is the stuff that they already have in the game.
It's existing gameplay content that they could chain together into something meaningful, but the economic side of it is broken right now, and some of the other things like it could progress very quickly into something unique that would drive it, but I know that there's a whole bunch of other stuff they're trying to focus on. So
Yeah. So then when we talk about that, you don't feel like those might be the kind of upgrades we see with the Nix system coming in. It might just be the same stuff as what we've already been getting.
sadly, what we're seeing is probably more of a pattern of what they're developing towards, and we're going to see more ASD. We're going to see more Second Life resource drive type missions. Um, I would love to have them bring in something high value like that, with the potential for a Vanduul raid. Like I know there's people in my org that they're just there for combat, like security escorts. Like they want to keep the miners safe, and
Yeah.
we have a lot of quiet days and we have one noisy day. It's not consistent. The security teams are going to be bored 9 times out of 10. and it's up to them if they keep coming and if we keep asking for it. And what happens that 10th time? If your security's not there, you've got a lost day. So
Yep. Got to be able to always pay, but you need to be able to get enough minerals to do that on the days when you don't. Yeah, that's the rough part. I think it's kind of like what you were saying about before the podcast. Actually, you're talking about like when you need to unlock these rewards, it's not necessarily
yeah,
that you're taking 20 missions; it's you're completing 20 missions. It's just
yeah,
the same way when you're mining. You're not necessarily always taking a risk, but sometimes you have one, sometimes you don't. And you got to cover your
yeah.
ass every time.
Yeah, and it's interesting looking at the difference in the complexity for those gameplay loops and the each step in that workflow from finding a rock to selling it. Each step is a potential pitfall where you could lose your cargo load, or let's say you crash into an invisible asteroid, or the jump gate doesn't work, so you have to refuel 3 times, and you are only able to get 1 or 2 hauls, 2 loads hauled out before your game session's over.
Right.
You know, other things like if the ship gets stored, the cargo gets locked to the grid. Like there are so many just random bugs that'll happen that will eliminate your ability to get paid. Where if you're out dogfighting, like if that target's dead, you're getting money, right? And that's A and B and done, right? And there's a lot more that goes into it as far as pilot skill, but when you're mining, when you're salvaging, you've got to survey, you've got to break, you've got to extract, you've got to haul, you got to refine, you got to then transfer and haul and sell again. So
Dude,
the
I
each
can
if you've got a 5% failure rate at every step in the way, you're getting paid at like 40% of your total orders. So
I can hear the pirates in chat freaking typing out their comments right now. Folks, if you don't know, this is just a dip of the toe into one of the biggest underground not even underground, just like debates in Star Citizen. I've seen this debate break out in Discord, on Twitter, on Reddit. The idea that like if you get pirated, this is going to set off a firestorm in comments. If you get pirated, it is more risk for the person getting pirated because of all the steps you're taking to get there. Whereas the pirate takes no risk because they're just flying there and killing someone. Then the pirates come out and they're like, well, yeah, but we also fail a lot of the pirate missions. We take a lot of time to plan that stuff. We do a lot of loadouts, and it's constant back and forth of this idea.
yeah, and I'm not here to dump on pirates. Like if I get
Red Monster
if I
hates
get
pirates.
if I get interdicted in the course of my regular business operations, right? If they're reasonable and they're like, hey, like we're checking permits today. It's 50,000 credits to get through the jump gate, right? Based on your load, there's 100,000 credit surplus on that. So like, just pay your 150 and move on. We're good. Like that type of thing. Yeah, absolutely. I'm cool with that. Right. That's good role play. That's playing a pirate or, kind of that extortionist route. But if I get interdicted and the first thing you do is send a size 9 torpedo through my ship and like just game over for me,
Yeah.
like, yeah,
Dude,
there's not much to be gained gameplay wise from that type of experience aside from just being a murder hobo, right? And that's, it is what it is. There are people who want to play that game style. I will say it's not for me, but I understand. Like there's other games that I'll play that maybe I just want to be that destructive style.
there's a challenge in making that possible, because not only do you have to weed out all the people who would just automatically murder hobo, which naturally is creating more friction in the game for everyone else, but then you also have to deal with the idea that like this is an ego problem. And not to say that anybody is wrong for not wanting to get robbed in a video game, but there's a really, really high wall that has to be broken through of people and like their feeling of pride or ego in a game where they don't feel like they should have to give something up just because somebody's asking. But as soon as somebody goes beyond asking, it's potentially griefing or harassment. And it's like, how do you make a game where people can feel okay getting held at gunpoint and forced to give over 50,000 credits when everyone's natural reaction is like, you, I'm going to shoot back.
Yeah. And And it's really interesting. I think it speaks to the balance, or kind of lack of balance in the gameplay right now, where ship survivability is not a thing, right?
Yeah.
You could argue it's there, but if somebody sends a size 9 torpedo and my ship is disabled but not destroyed, like, I still have an opportunity to bring people out. If I have 10 minutes, 15 minutes before like that is fully, beyond my control, maybe, yeah, like, but I think the ship survivability needs to be really kind of rethought, to avoid that murder hobo thing, but also like, you know um, give the people that are out there pirating, and if it comes to blows and they're able to destroy your ship, they're going to want to be able to get paid from that too, right? And that's the balance of them having to then haul all that cargo that you just had, while you're on the counterpoint trying to come back and recover what you can and maybe deal some retribution. That would be interesting emergent gameplay, of a logistical player versus a pirate, but we don't have that right now, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, we don't have a lot of stuff right now. So yeah, Nyx it's going to have more of that kind of dynamic than Stanton does. I would say, it's supposed to be easier than Pyro. Really, it's hard to say what it's going to be because it all depends on the reputation. We don't even know really how they're going to handle crime in the Nyx system. Like, we know that People's Alliance likes to keep the peace. We know that the system itself is quote unquote lawful, but it is not really protected by the UEE. So it's hard to know
Yeah.
even what makes a pirate in the Nyx system.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's independently lawful, but I feel like they still have their own code they go by,
Yeah.
right? And that's where you kind of the outlaws or whatever from that system. Yeah, they're out there violating whatever code, right? That's I think the law system there, it'll be a separate reputation tier from what like the UEE. If you're out there harassing the UEE and causing problems in trade lanes, you've got a bunch of crime stats reported against you, you're you absolutely should expect that like you'll be considered hostile for most of the UEE space. But getting into the Citizens for Prosperity and whatever other factions as new systems come online, like they might be like, okay, like you're not liked over there, that's fine, like we don't care as long as you don't break our rules, we're gonna look the other way, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think I'm really interested in knowing if it's just going to be that same crime stat system. I guess that would be the easiest
Yeah.
way to do it. Are they going to switch over to having more reputation guide this crime stuff, or is it a crime stat? It's just confusing. I wish they had given a roadmap for reputation development like they did with item recovery.
Yeah. And also, let's take this through the next of the 5-star systems, right? We're gonna have Castra and Terra that are gonna be pretty heavily UEE influenced. So this is probably a good opportunity for them to identify where like some of the interfaction reputation comes in.
Yeah.
Um, and it may not be the same. Maybe we're gonna see that shield tech, the shield tokens that are supposed to be
Oh
kind
god.
of your control and your enforcement, right? Hey, don't do that. This is the 1.0 roadmap.
Yeah, I
But
mean,
yeah, getting shield tech involved and
it's like one of those
yeah,
things where I'm like, dude, that's a lot.
yeah,
That's a whole lot cuz it's launching that is one thing. But getting that to fit into like the zeitgeist of the community and have people strategizing every week and wanting to get into this
mhm,
scenario every week on this game, that's going to take a whole force of the game becoming a real game. It's not like they can just drop the features for that shield tech in and people will just start doing the whole pyro
yeah,
battleground. It's going to lose its importance so quickly if there's nothing to actually be won out there. So
yeah. And
that's
if
one of
it's
those things. Sorry, that's one of those things I look at and I'm like, Chris, did you consider this when you said 2027 for 1.0?
yeah, and as well, like it's got to be competitive, right? Where I think there's going to be like natural factions of player organizations that form to try and maintain control like that, and you're going to end up with a couple of conglomerates like these superpowers that are really kind of balance out between, maybe one system is all they can focus on, but how to be involved there.
It'll be cool if it works. That's for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Before that, in terms of content, the biggest drop that we see coming in 4.4 next month is going to be this, not necessarily an event, it's rather kind of a narrative set of missions, almost a new location storyline called Sworn Enemies, which is basically players getting hired by Intersec, a new faction, to go into the system and investigate some space stations that have been under attack by unknown forces, which we find out are a new faction, and the Vanduul. What do you think of this introduction to Nyx?
It's what I was hoping for Nyx, to be able to start getting Vanduul interactions in the persistent universe, and really kind of helping drive the dangerous, frontier aspect, as well as kind of the hostile alien races that, I think that kind of represents what the frontier of Nyx is supposed to be. And you've got factions that might not have seen that as a hostile relationship and maybe seen it as something that could be, I guess, synergistic with their desires. And yeah, if they're stealing Vandal biomass, whether living or dead, for their experiments, I can see why the Vandal would be upset about that. But it's an interesting aspect they're going after, and I'm just excited to get Vandal raids, in the persistent universe. So,
do you think that's going to be different? Like, will it be kind of like we're fighting just our normal enemies, but in Vanduul ships, or you think they'll actually be and act differently?
I think they will be and act differently. I think that they've shown they can do different archetypes. We talk about like ace pilots and stuff in some of the current missions. I think the Vandal are going to behave differently for sure. And kind of utilizing the strengths of their ships, they're going to have maybe a different fighting and flying style compared to what we've seen already. It might be more swarm based, where they might hold a little bit closer to wings of ships rather than just kind of right now you get out and it just kind of turns into a hairball with most NPC pilots going solo. It might be interesting to see if they kind of maintain a tight grouping of like 4 or 5 ships all together and kind of do that almost like on the Matrix, third Matrix movie at the as the Sentinels are all crashing into, right, that type of swarm, and just I'd hope for that type of activity, but maybe that's not lore accurate to how the Vanduul fight. So
I don't know. In the videos, it seemed like they were holding formations. I do hope that's something that happens. It'd be very cool to get into the system and then run into Vanduul and be like, "Oh, guys, we need to be careful. That's not, it's not just so and so faction. Like, they will mess us up."
Yeah.
Do you think that oh, sorry, go ahead.
And I was going to say, getting some larger Vanduul ships as well, starting to encounter those.
Right.
They teased at a few of those,
Right.
which would be a pretty exciting reward. And for those who are aware of Operation Pitchfork, maybe that's going to kind of lead into a symbolic or a spiritual successor for that, since I'm not sure we're getting Vandal systems on 1.0 release, but
we got to get some version of that for sure. I think there's a lot of, after talking to Paul about the whole Nyx system last week, I think it was, there's definitely a lot of directions they could go with the story in this game, and it really just depends on how much they're willing to change as we go forward. But it could be really, really interesting what they do with the Nyx system and the whole UEE and Vanduul storyline.
Yeah. And maybe there's going to be a whole mission chain like the Second Life resource drive for this Operation Pitchfork idea.
Yeah.
So
that's actually something I really enjoy about this edition with Nyx, called Sworn Enemies. It's similar, it feels, to the ASD underground facilities, in that it's a set of missions that is kind of tied to a storyline. It's like a narrative location based mission set, but but the way that they talked about it made it sound like whatever happens in these missions in the space station could determine what contracts you can take afterward. And you can almost see
Yeah.
them doing that a little bit with the Yormandi and the Hyperion mission in the ASD facilities. And I do wonder
Mm.
how much further they might go with this, but I really enjoy this delivery of doing a set of like anywhere from like 3 to 7 to 10 missions surrounding this narrative that you can do and then move on to other things. Is that a format that you enjoy, or would you prefer it was more sandbox and open-ended right now?
You know what? I'm actually loving this main story that they've been introducing. We talk about. I think the last time I was on, we might have been like kind of early on with Helldivers 2, and their like major orders and stuff, kind of directing the narrative of what seems like a living game and environment. The player interactions are affecting things, right?
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan of that, but as we said earlier, they're delivering finished gameplay storyline with an unfinished game that's trying to do its best to support it. So
It can be a
but
bit rough sometimes.
yeah, yeah,
I hope that it goes well. I think this is probably the biggest update of the year, but anything can happen. It's the release of a new star system. We don't know everything that they have planned for it, but I think 4.4 sounded like a good deal. Um,
yeah.
Before we move on to some mining talk, any last bits you wanted to say about that new update?
I mean, there's some specific mining stuff that is going to be a dimension in 4.4, and kind of their rock cracker event eventually in Nyx. Um, there are interesting aspects to that, and I think as far as the dynamic and kind of sandbox events, I just hope that it's not as easily disrupted as some of the other events that we've seen.
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay.
yeah.
Well, let's jump into that. First, before we talk about where mining is headed, I want to start with kind of where it came from. It's been, besides running some little box missions here and there as a courier, mining has been the longest running industrial game loop in the game. Launched in 2018, I believe, and it's made some decent progress since then. But in your mind, how do you feel like they've handled the progression of mining over the last like 7 years since they brought it in?
Yeah. First, if I didn't like the way that it was being handled, I probably wouldn't be involved in mining as much as I am right now. I feel like it's a great balance of complexity within the actual kind of mining gameplay loop, the power management, and the size and scale that we have right now fits the ships for the most part. So yeah, the how they've the bigger milestones throughout the its history. Yeah, obviously getting us to the point where I feel like we've got a really great ecosystem around their power balance, power management gameplay, as well as the unique materials that are being brought in. Um, the main milestone that I'm waiting for, or there's really kind of two. Bringing in quality-based minerals now, switching from kind of a mixed material composition to a single material with high quality, which I hope that's the way they're going. I haven't seen it be, mixed materials with mixed quality. That would be probably a little bit more
Too
nightmarish.
much? Yeah.
Yeah.
So you
Yeah.
would definitely draw a line there then. You would say if they're going to switch to quality levels determining a lot of how you're mining, you think every deposit should be like a pure deposit?
Yeah, it should be one specific material with a quality level, right? And it could be next to other materials, but I do want it to be a monotype of that material. And maybe you have an opportunity to get better quality sub breaks or whatever comes from that. Um, I don't want it to just be point the laser at the ground and magically collect resources without like any other action happening. I think the rock break process, going from a boulder that turns into smaller fragments that you can then extract and they disappear, like that's part of the core gameplay that needs to stay. But I would like to see that happen within the scope of or qualities being kind of unique within that.
Okay.
The second big milestone is we need mining gameplay that matches the scale of the Arastra and the Orion. And I feel like the rocks we have right now today don't really match that. We need to get into something larger. If we just take our current rocks and go one order of magnitude larger, and they need to break down into that. Maybe that's the way they do it. Or we saw the Rock Cracker event where we're going to be using smaller ships to get in and out of that, but maybe that feeds into some of the dynamic aspects of what we might see from an Orion. Now, I don't want to have to take an Orion out there and find something that's specifically curated and placed like that to start breaking into.
Yeah.
I'd like to go freelance a lot more and just finding something that's going to be a natural and matching that scale. That's the next big milestone. Is we have a good understanding of the scale for kind of the single and small multi-crew, but that capital class mining is going to need something unique, and we haven't really seen what that looks like yet.
Do you think they're going to have to move away from this idea that we're just mining a bunch of boulders? We've seen in some of the videos they've shown at this very CitizenCon, they showed ships mining gigantic asteroids that are way bigger than the ships. They've
Right.
shown inside Rock Cracker, they were mining into like a geode kind of thing. Do you think they're actually
Yeah.
going to introduce different types of mining potentially?
Yeah, and I kind of hinted that maybe this was part of the Maelstrom technology. So objects that are kind of gonna dynamically break apart, destructible buildings and stuff. They could use that same technology on a very large asteroid that you have to carve multiple times, but like you could get it to a manageable position where maybe it starts looking like a voxel-based game, like where Space Engineers or like No Man's Sky, you can mine and collect specific portions. It could be that there's an area you affect with a mining laser to some limit, but you still have to make that power balance, the optimal and overcharge windows, and kind of balance that out.
A lot of the miners I've talked to have either had conspiracy theories about or wish there was more reliance on the idea of where you point your laser makes a big difference about how
Yeah.
the rocks break and crack. And I think everyone would appreciate if that was like an actual provable game mechanic.
And to just harp on that a little bit, I actually went through and did a very scientific controlled study of whether or not aiming the laser at the bright spot, the fissures on the rock or an intersection. Yeah, I went through and tested it pretty heavily one day just because I was so sick of people telling me like, oh, like if you aim at the corners, like I will tell you there are so many superstitious tales out there, but like
Constantly on streams, dude.
it's oh yeah, and they're like, oh no, like you just wiggle it in a figure eight or something.
You just didn't do it right that time, man.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I've done enough of it that I just don't believe the old wives' tales about it anymore. And that's
All right then. Mining
it's
Maestro
adorable.
himself says it here. Like is in chat. Yeah, is it a clockwise or counterclockwise figure eight? Dude, you just gotta you gotta have the
Yeah.
right directions to be a good miner. Okay.
I will say I have been able to avoid superstitious habits very very much throughout my life, and I feel like if I were less prone to superstitions, then yeah, I probably would be out there just developing my own whole routine. I'd have the same coveralls I'd wear every time I go. So
Really the coveralls that do it. Honestly, if you're just calling the rest of them out. Guys, stop being so superstitious. No, but that's one that pops up. I do think though that pops up because people want it. We want more than just point laser at rock,
My-
wait for it to go up the scale enough.
My favorite, the Mr. Puff and stuff from our group, he swears that if you are able to keep the optimal charge level at the very bottom of the green zone, like barely as much energy as you need to get it in there, he swears that you get these unicorn breaks, like perfect breaks all the time, because you don't put too much good energy into it.
Dude,
And
I love
Yeah.
that. It's not like
Yeah.
any of us don't want that. We do. It's just some of us want it so much we're willing to believe it. I genuinely
Yeah.
I hope that they mix that kind of stuff into the nuance of mining. Do you think that
Yep.
as a game mechanic it's just like underdeveloped because it's not important, or do you think they feel satisfied with where it is?
Um, yeah, I think there's some complexities involved in deciding where, where to provide a bonus like that. Um, you know, um, Without getting too like right now there's like a bunch of other factors that are driving things, and it's really hard to isolate like what specifically is driving craziness in a rock. It could be server issues, it could be the rock's instability itself, it could just be the random number generator that decides when you break what you get. So um, there's a lot of aspects out there for it. I think they're satisfied with where it's at right now, and I think if we're moving into something like a maelstrom based technology or some other type of overarching system that handles our current scale of rocks plus those an order or two of magnitude larger to satisfy like the Orion owners and stuff. Um, if they have a system like that they're working on, it doesn't make sense to put more energy into a legacy system that will kind of convert over, but they can add some of those unique features, and maybe they could clarify with in-game hints or something that say, hey, like they talk about a sweet spot on, kind of the sweet zone when you're refining and, um, disintegrating, right?
Yeah.
Sorry, the word took a minute. But there's like a sweet spot for disintegration where you get a bonus yield. They have some indications for that. They show where you get a reduced yield, and that makes perfect sense.
It's
So
actually a really good point. They've told us there's a sweet spot in salvage. Why would they not tell us that there's something like that if there was in
yeah,
mining? Yeah,
yeah,
it's
because
go ahead.
they want people to be superstitious. They want people out there doing figure eights, because I guarantee somebody out there that program this is just watching these streams and like there's got to be like a bingo card of weird superstitions they've seen come up that yeah.
They're building up a compilation. Silly,
Yeah.
silly mining mishaps. Um, okay. Let's talk about a little bit more about the future of mine. I guess we already kind of have been there. One of the more interesting things, one of I think the most exciting parts of a space game that has planets is the idea that like the gameplay changes when you get down on a planet. And when it comes to mining, we know more about mining on planets than in space. So I've heard a lot of miners over the years talk about the idea that like when you're on Earth and you're looking for specific minerals, you kind of can tell via eyesight what signs you're looking for. From Planet Tech V5, it sounds kind of like they're getting to that point. Do you think that explorers are going to have more fun, like have more depth to their profession because they'll be able to sort of zone in on the right area just because they're like looking at the ground from way up in space or something?
Yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting mix, a combination of both, like being able to spot the right biome for the materials you want, then also maybe coming across areas where the conditions for that material are bright, even though it seems like maybe a non-ideal area. I think that the skill base will shift a little bit as we get to those new mineral distributions and how the planetary tech works. And yeah, I absolutely believe that the steep hillside with that scree kind of wash underneath the boulders and cliffs. That's gonna be a really interesting place to go find some unique materials that maybe to getting into stratification. Like maybe it's something that was buried for a few millennia, and that's part of the conditions for the rock to
Yes,
appear. Is
bro.
yeah.
I hope that they
So
mix in the FPS and ship minables together so that you can kind of like drop people off to do that. Because it's cool to find a mineral area, but it kind of is a bummer when you don't feel like you can do like multiple scales of the job on the same site.
yeah. But and like they sold the Arastra with the idea that it could haul around a gray cat rock,
Right.
right? And I got to tell you, I don't know how many times. No, I do know how many times I've wanted to take a gray cat rock out with my mole as well, and it's been zero because like the profit structure between gemstone mining and ore mining is entirely different. But I think as we get into that, we start talking about using those materials in crafting and base building and giving us something to do besides sell them for profit in the future. That's where kind of the multifaceted mining would make sense.
Yeah, I think I would really love to see just more rarity. Like
Yeah,
there should be a lot. I know it's weird to say, I guess, but elements that are unique to certain star systems seem like they're kind of necessary just for gameplay, or I guess
yeah,
at least
and
the quality level.
yeah. There's a combination, like different elements certainly being unique, creating a bottleneck, making sure you need to go to those other systems, but then also give us a rarity variation right within a rock so that you feel like you have a good break still, right? So, for example, if you come across a good quantanium rock, but it's all 400 quality, but as you start breaking it down, you have subfragments that are some are 200 and some are 600. And if you're really lucky, maybe you get a 900 quality subfragment, and you can kind of that's the type of differentiation I'd like to see. And then you can prioritize those high quality fragments, or if you don't really care, you scoop everything, or um, you know, sell off the location to somebody else that wants to come scoop up the bulk.
Yeah,
Right?
that's where I'm. Ooh, I can't wait to sell locations and stuff. What do you
Yeah.
think they could do to make FPS mining more interesting?
Um. Ooh, yeah. First, I think one of the biggest struggles for FPS mining is actually finding it. If you are not in a cave, like it can still show up on the planet's surfaces, but it is really, really like you've got to be within like 400 meters for it to even start popping up. And if you're flying on a ship, trying to catch things at 400 meters, like when I'm out like doing my regular mining surveys, in a 4 to 6 hour long mining session, I might see one FPS deposit
Oy.
throughout that entire time, right? And it's a factor of like how I'm looking versus how somebody who's specifically looking for surface FPS minables might do it, but you're definitely like needle in a haystack there. Um, Giving us caves, caves with good amount of good concentration and variety is a good one.
Dude, they have not been
I
talking
think,
about caves. Makes me nervous.
yeah, yeah, and bringing in other aspects of like location based, like missions that you can say, hey, this person's found a huge cluster of these FPS mineable deposits, and you can pay a fee to go down there and kind of like the diamond mine. You can buy your way in for the day, and then you get to keep whatever you collect. That type of thing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I think the caves, the fact that they don't talk about caves that much makes me nervous, but um that does sound like some good stuff. I think FPS mining could be like a really, really great thing for new players to be able to do, but right now it's still pretty like there's not an obvious way to learn it or get
yeah.
into it.
So you talk about caves, as far as like the Genesis planetary tech. Wouldn't I mean they talk about features like trees and rocks and grass and all these things existing because it seems like a natural place for it to be. Don't you think that there could be a rule set for caves to appear based on the same thing? Like
I would think.
if you have an area with enough vertical cliff face, like there's going to be some type of undercutting for a maybe a bouldery type cave where we had the original ones, a lot more rocky. Maybe if you're in a sand environment, you've got an opportunity for the sand caves, right? And
Yeah.
there are ways they could generate that and potentially bring it in. But I would think we'd probably still have similar like a couple of cave archetypes that they've curated.
Yeah.
We might get similar layouts or a modular type that it could put together for us. But
Yeah, we get like the rock caves, the sand caves, the acidic caves. The funny thing is like if this were 3.7, 3.12 of Star Citizen, in 4.3 they would have added water cave as a card in the roadmap.
Mhm.
Because they just loved to, if there
Yeah.
was ever any location change, they would put it in there. But now, actually, no, I think the cave is in there. Now that I think of it, I think they put Yormandi Cave on there, so it's not necessarily a new
Yeah.
archetype, but they do put it on there like that. And I think you're right. They should be able to do that. It's just weird that they're talking about cliffs and mountains and rivers and fauna and flora and all this stuff that can spawn in because of their rules, but they never mention caves for some reason.
Yeah.
Yeah, here it is. Yormandi Cave is on there. That's funny. I do think that
Yeah.
caves with lakes in them are like a pretty big crowd favorite. They should keep doing that.
Yeah.
But yeah, the other thing you mentioned was like the ability to find these things is actually really important. The whole scanning and radar and how you locate stuff and how all that works
Yes.
needs a huge overhaul to make mining work better.
Yeah, and like scanning seems to change just about every patch. Something with the interface, the distances, the icons and stuff. And there have been times, certain patches where scanning just doesn't seem to work at all, or within specific vehicles. Um, as we get planetary tech, I think that's going to put even more pressure on a scanning system that I think needs a little bit more polish. I'd love to be able to fine tune the signals I'm looking for to narrow down on maybe a specific density of minerals. You've got metal detectors out there today that can pick things up at a decent range, right? And advancing that into 930 years in the future, a spaceship with a dedicated computer and all that processing power we've obviously spent 1,000 years developing, and it still can only pick up a boulder from 9 kilometers away.
Oof. Yeah, sorry, buddy. They only got to the 70 series of GPUs
Yeah,
to handle that.
right.
NVIDIA went
Yeah.
out of business. Yeah, I agree though that the scanning in general, it's pretty pitiful. I would love for there to be like you can scan things from super far. Like
Hmm.
there's got to be some kind of gameplay where you can be in orbit and scan a
Yeah.
planet's surface and get like a very generic layout of the land and somehow determine. I know that given the way that this kind of looks, we could probably find something here.
Yeah. Give people with a Terrapin something to look after. Like, have you played any Kerbal Space Program?
Yeah.
And done. Yeah. So you've got the planetary scanner there that gives you kind of a heat map,
Yeah.
right? And if they were to at least give that level and say, these are the conditions I know this particular rare mineral might spawn at. Get up there, it scans an area and a field of view, and it generates a heat map for you and says, okay, I want to ping a couple of hot spots where I think this might be possible. Mark those locations with your scanning ship and then go start surveying. Like,
Yeah.
that would be a huge boost. And, it might take some time to do, and you might have to put in the right parameters. But realistically, like that type of scanning would be huge. And as you go to those 3 locations, maybe you notice all 3 of them have a specific type of tree, or there's a specific combination of biomes that are kind of converging there, and you start to develop your patterns and then be able to recognize just by sight,
Yeah.
that type of thing.
That's the whole
So,
point of this whole our planet's work on rules. It's not it's not an artist that did it. That means that we should reliably be able to go there and see
mhm,
those rules fold out and be able to develop our system on it. That's a huge part of exploration.
mhm.
I hope we can depend on that kind of thing happening. Um
Yeah,
Everything has to be worth the money to do though, right?
right. But I would think exploration players would be super excited about having, kind of like an IR camera, almost like a heat map of, if you go into a remote turret and have just a heat map of where the conditions are ideal for what you're looking after.
Yeah.
You know,
You can just like click a
uh,
button to get different overlays.
yeah, and
Ooh.
similar to how we manage our like the mining gadgets, you fine tune the parameters you're looking for, and it brings your heat map in closer or further, and target specific things. that would be, kind of ideal exploration gameplay, but obviously that's more out there in the unconcepted space, more or less.
I hope so. I mean, that's got to be in the near future. We have to have that stuff if they're developing. Like, there's so much behind the idea of introducing resource quality that
Hmm.
all these implications that we're talking about kind of need to take a step forward if that's going to be a thing. You can't just introduce resource quality and not allow people to be able to detect what the quality is.
Yeah, yeah, and
Um,
especially since it's going to be a little bit more widespread as far as where minerals are going to be able to get to, and um, maybe not as exclusive, or maybe it will be more system exclusive for materials. But yeah, being able to understand that, finding a way to target it, like they're creating differentiation there, but not telling us, like, they need to give us the tools to be able to filter through that,
right.
right?
Yeah, exactly. What is something that they could do that would really actually impress you when it came to mining come 4.4?
Come 4.4. I think just looking at the variety of minerals that are going to be available, if there's a big change to the glacium ring, compared to like the Aaron Halo or some of the other asteroid fields we've seen, um, if we can get like hotspots within the ring of specific materials, right now all these asteroid belts, just a random grab bag of the same type of materials, or a low chance of everything, and there's no real concentration. If they're able to create some concentration aspects, so that you go to a location, you have a little bit better chance at finding high value materials, or a specific material that they're looking for. Like I gave the example of a Grecium, or like kind of the mid tier stuff. Do things like that, and if there's a um, outside of just the mining gameplay itself, if they were to just pop in a mission, the once a day you have a bonus demand signal for one material, right? They say today, like, the Levski refinery wants borates, right? And they're paying a huge premium for it, and it puts it up into like a tier 1 level, like on par with what you're getting paid for gold. Like, yeah, that would make it so it's a lot more profitable on certain things, and maybe have an opportunity to start stockpiling materials. If you go through and set up right now, like a refinery order for like what we're doing on our big Sunday mornings, like we're only refining the Quantanium, Bexlite, Ternite, Gold, like your tier 1 and tier S stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Anything that's like mid tier or low tier, we're not even refining, because it's just not worth it to haul and try and deal with selling. So kind of focusing that in, but giving us missions for mid tier and even high tier stuff, to pay out a bonus, that would help balance out the economics. And I think the other aspect is, if they can give us an economic balancing pass, compared to everything else, get the payments and the payouts balanced against other gameplay loops, and maybe make it a little bit more worth our effort.
Yeah.
So,
I really like the idea of hotspots in the Glacium ring. I hope that ring comes in and it's actually different from
mhm,
the Aaron Halo. It's going to be disappointing if it's just another asteroid belt that feels the same way.
yeah, it's the same mixture of just gray everything. Like, you don't
Yeah.
have a you know
Of course, there's going to be Delamar and Levski, and we know they have space stations planned for in there, but it's like the asteroid spawning. That's what's
mhm,
going to be most interesting. How much can you play with the points of interest in there? I also do like the idea of um, just an economic pass too.
mhm.
Just changing how much people actually care about these things would be good. What are some more advanced things maybe that go past 4.4 that you like? You talk about the Erastra and preparing for that. The Orion is also another big ship. What is that
Mhm.
end state mining that you feel like they're going to need to unlock before they get there?
Yeah. I mean, realistically, if there was a rock that took 3 Orions to break, and you spent 6 or 12 hours as an org just trying to break down and harvest that, and there was still left over, like, I would like to have large multi-section rocks out there, like that would be, really perfect end goal of, hey, this like really big chunk of whatever, like almost a protoplanet, if you can get that level of scale, right, to where like you couldn't even do it with a couple of Orions, like multi Orion type environments. That would be, I think balancing out the gameplay for the scale that they need, right? Make it that difficult, give us that type of range where we'll have the smallest stuff you can do with FPS, up to the point where you'd need a full fleet of mining ships to manage. So.
I like that. And it's kind of fits in with what you were saying the other day about Maelstrom, or not the other day, earlier in the podcast about Maelstrom. Kind of, if you can have an asteroid that's, say, I don't know, 300,000 units of compared to what we have right now, but you're able to like slice that in half or something, or like you can do a little borehole and put an explosive in there to blow it apart and have like all the prospectors come in and help you and stuff. That would, yeah, I could see that being end game of mining. I'm always sitting here thinking that they've got to make some really big changes to make the Orion super convincing, but just
Yeah.
kind of scaling it based on the power it puts out and how many lasers it has and stuff. That could be a really cool way of doing it.
Yeah, and I think the scale has to be right. Where right now the mining we've got rocks that take 2 or 3 moles fully crewed to be able to break. I want the scale to match that for the Orion on the highest end. That you're going to need maybe 3 of them, and that's kind of the Maelstrom tech. That gets into like almost voxel based, and some decisions about where to actually slice that. Uh, you kind of goes back to the idea of like, how do you eat an elephant? It's like one bite at a time, and you just got to choose how to part that up, right?
Yeah, that's where the
So,
strategy comes in for mining.
yeah, and that's where like large scale orgs would really shine for that type of gameplay. So,
And it kind of feels like that could be the future that Rock Cracker shows us. Like, do you think, in my mind, Rock Cracker is basically just they took what they learned at Hathor and they're applying it to something bigger. Do you think they could take what they learned from Rock Cracker and turn it into just, this is what larger scale mining kind of looks like?
I hope large scale mining doesn't end up like Rock Cracker, because that's more of a curated event. Like I like having that freelance kind of sandbox
I just
for those large ships that we got.
I just mean more in the sense that like there are large asteroids out there that you need to have like a large power source to break, like an
Oh yeah,
Orion or something.
yeah. I absolutely would like that to be what the Orion gets into, right? That scale of rock, if you're able to like fly inside with the smaller ships, it makes sense. I don't think that's the exact execution I would go for
Right.
with an Orion, but maybe that's the way they're going. The Orion was originally concepted to have like mining drones, so it could be that you just open up the rock with the Orion, and those drones go in and manage, or you have your own crew that does it. So
I hope so. I think a lot of folks, myself included, who like mining would champion your idea of
hmm,
let's have sessions that take like 2 days straight of like teams coming in and out and trading off the job and getting it done. That's
yeah.
peak what we want. That's what I want. Um, Last question I have for you regarding mining in Star Citizen. Are there any other games that you would say do mining really well would that you think either like a feature or a derivative of a feature in one of those games would do really well with Star Citizen's mining?
Um, yeah, I mean, I'm just kind of looking at my notes because you had asked this, and some of the other games that I found, um, like EVE Online, it's more AFK mining. You're able to go locate where minerals might be, but there's not like nobody really has like the complexity of the power management aspect that Star Citizen has. With Elite Dangerous, like you've got mining lasers and limpets that collect. Um,
I know the
I
deep
guess
core mining in ED is a favorite.
yeah, and I actually had I haven't been in Elite Dangerous since deep core mining came out, so I've never actually tried that.
Huh.
But yeah, I mean, like No Man's Sky, that's still like a voxel based and all like procedurally generated. So, um, I would like the ability to have a localized area you kind of carve away within like the Maelstrom tech or kind of similar. I guess the question was like, what other games are doing that well, and what features might I want to see ported in?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, realistically, I think the main thing, like the current gameplay for mining a Star Citizen, the mini game of the actual breaking of the rocks itself is great. I love the complexity of it and that balance of power. I think it's just everything around it, like that needs to be aligned to and supporting that. So like that's the economic balance. That's looking at the mineral qualities and getting that executed. It's bringing back kind of those unicorn breaks, those like jackpot moments where um, it used to be that like if you had I don't know how much you did like Lyria Quantanium mining when it was like the real hot spot, you get rocks with up to 50% Quantanium in them, and then you'd have a bunch of like 2%ers, 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 and then you'd find one 50%, and you've just like that was a jackpot moment for people. I have not seen nearly as many of those, and that's where like as a surveyor it's kind of it's rolling the dice, right? And it's kind of you get that jackpot moment that I think is missing, and I'd like to bring that back a little bit more. Whether that looks like specifically like really good breaks on subfragments, everything just kind of seems to be mediocre now, where you have about 20 to 40% of most materials, and when they break out of 6 subfragments, you'll see 20 or 30% in each. You don't hardly ever get those like really good unicorn breaks where everything's just in the one fragment and you come off like um come off with a really good haul. So
Well, the big jackpot breaks are now going to be different, right? Because it's not about percentage; it's about quality. Well, that's what we're hoping for.
yeah, like I would hope that you'd have some good jackpot moments for quality, right? And the way that they could program that in, like the gameplay supports it, like the actual recipes to do those rocks in its current state could support it, but we'd have to see how that looks if they're going to other type of rock generation recipes or
All
rules,
right.
right?
I wonder how the
But
components and like subcomponents and gadgets are going to change too to kind of support that.
yeah, yeah.
All right, man. That about wraps up the conversation for today. Any last bits you wanted to put in about 4.4 or mining or my inability to speak English?
No, I've struggled with that too. Words are hard, but no, I'm excited to get a new location, and just a quick plug for Regolith.rocks. I know it's going to be a huge tool to collect survey data from the Nix system. So as people get out there, start populating that with data and figuring out what we're going to find, and as we get additional points of interest. Now, that's developed by Ray Chaser from United Earth Mining Corporation, and he's done a fantastic job. Had reached out to me for some advice and just some consultation when it was still pretty early, but it's kind of become the standard. For people who aren't using Regolith.rocks already, you should look into it because it's a really great tool. But getting in and doing surveying on Nix is going to be pretty exciting. I'll spend a lot of time doing that, helping populate the data there, since there was a change in the access to that. But um, yeah, I'm excited to see what those missions are going to bring in, as well as kind of our opportunities to get into a new star system. So
Yeah.
hopefully some new minerals and other stuff.
I bet you guys are going to be having good fun in your org, by the way, doing some mining. You want to let folks know where they can find your org, what kind of stuff you guys
Yeah.
do, and also what content you do.
Yeah, so you can find me on Twitch and YouTube at RedMonsterSC. I do a Sunday morning mining session every week with the Red Legion. The Red Legion is my org, redlegion.gg or discord.gg/Red Legion. So yeah, on our Sunday morning mining sessions, we go out and do group mining, either ore mining for the majority of the time, or we'll switch to like gemstone or FPS mining as a patch is about to drop. And we have really large scale industrial setup. So we have a whole sea that we're using as a pit stop. We drop off full ore pods there from our mining crews, swap them out with empty pods and get them back into the field. And then, yeah, we've got logistics teams that are moving those ore pods to the refinery, bringing back the empties, and just kind of keeping everything cycled. So it's really a very interesting look at large scale industrial gameplay using current game mechanics. And we do that every Sunday morning at 8 a.m. Mountain Time, and we go for like 4 or 5 hours. So it's a pretty good event. Beyond that, I get some variety games. We were talking about playing like Battlefield 6. I've been playing Project Zomboid and Manor Lords, so I get those throughout the week. And then yeah, Friday nights are kind of a variety games with the org. So
Very good, dude. Well, I appreciate you coming through. Thank you so much for sharing about your experience and talking about mining. I think mining next to cargo hauling is probably the most important industrial thing happening in Star Citizen, and there's a lot that they need to do to get it into the right place. But I don't know, from like to close things out, would you say it's going well? Are they doing a good job with it?
They've got the gameplay mechanics in, but the things that I have the biggest struggle with are kind of the economic balancing, and that I think as we get crafting and base building in are going to hopefully settle out a little bit. But of course, we'll want to keep an eye to the future and see what features they're able to deliver and help complement that. So, yeah,
Hoping for the best. All right,
hoping for
man.
the best.
Thank you again for meeting up, folks. Thanks for listening or watching if you're around here on YouTube. If you want to go somewhere where there's a few less ads, we are also on audio platforms, Spotify, Apple, Pocket Casts, all the places. But if you like it right here on YouTube because of our pretty little faces, then we'll be right here always waiting for you.
Well, I do say we both have great radio voices. So, you know.
So, you know, you don't have to watch us. You can just listen.
Yeah.
Before you go, Red, I do have to ask, I forgot to do this last week. I got to get a prediction from you for the next 6 to 9 months of Star Citizen, a hot take that we can come back and look at next time you're on the show. What would you like to put into the sheet?
What I'm going to put, a hot take, we're going to get the concept for an alien mining ship. That's it.
Okay. I wish you the best. We'll be back to see if you were right about that one. But folks, I hope you enjoyed this show and Talk with Red Monster. I'll see you all next week.